Around 109 BC in the wildlands near modern-day Bulgaria, a boy was born among the proud tribes of Thrace. His name was Spartacus. The mountains were his cradle, and the winds carried the spirit of warriors. From the very first days of his life, his world was filled with the echoes of steel, the songs of hunters and the whispers of freedom. As a child, Spartacus ran barefoot through the forests, chasing wild boars and climbing rocky hills. Hunger, cold, and pain were part of life, but they made him strong. His father taught him how to use a spear, how to stand tall even in fear. His mother told him that a man's soul is measured not by his chains, but by how hard he fights against them. But beyond the mountains, a storm was rising, the power of Rome. Its legions marched into Thrace, demanding tribute and obedience. Villages burned, warriors fell, and many were taken as slaves. Spartacus, still a young boy, witnessed the pride of his people crushed beneath Roman boots. That day he saw the faces of his friends in chains. That day a fire was born in his heart, the fire of defiance. Years passed, but the boy of Thrace never forgot the chains he had seen. He trained with wooden swords, imagining the day he would fight for his people. He learned the language of Rome, studied their ways, and waited for the moment to strike. Spartacus grew into a man shaped by pain, sharpened by injustice, and destined for rebellion. The world did not yet know it, but the child born in the cold hills of Thrace would one day rise to challenge an empire. As he reached his 20s, Spartacus was captured and enlisted as an auxiliary soldier in the Roman army. Rome often recruited men from Thrace because of their bravery and endurance. At first, he served loyally. He fought in campaigns across the Balkans, following orders and surviving brutal winters and bloody battles. But soon he realized that Rome treated Thracians not as equals, but as tools to die for the empire. Disillusioned by Roman cruelty, Spartacus deserted his unit. Some accounts suggest he tried to return to his homeland, seeking freedom and peace. But desertion was a grave crime in Rome. Roman scouts hunted him down. He was captured again, this time not as a soldier, but as a traitor. Shackled and humiliated, he was sent to the slave markets of Capua. Capua was known for its gladiator schools. Thousands of slaves were trained there to fight and die for the entertainment of Roman citizens. Spartacus was purchased by a lanista, a gladiator trainer. The trainer saw something in his eyes, not fear, but fury. Spartacus was forced into brutal training. He fought against other slaves, learned Roman combat styles, and mastered the short sword, the gladius. But deep inside, he still remembered the mountains of Thrace and the freedom of his youth. Years passed. Spartacus became one of the most skilled fighters in the arena. Yet, he despised the cheers of the crowd. Every drop of blood spilled reminded him of his stolen life. He began to speak with other gladiators, Gauls, Greeks, Syrians, men who, like him, had been taken from their homes. They whispered about escape, about rebellion, about breaking their chains. In the silence of the night, the spark of resistance was born. In Capua's barracks, Spartacus planned carefully. He studied the guards' routines, the armory, the exits. He waited for the perfect moment. His leadership began to shine even before the rebellion. He was calm, strategic, and inspired loyalty among men who had lost everything. What started as whispers in the dark would soon ignite into one of the greatest uprisings in ancient history. By his late 20s, Spartacus was no longer a simple gladiator. He was a symbol of defiance, of lost freedom, of the human will to fight back. His eyes no longer held the innocence of youth. They burned with the fire of purpose. Soon, the world would know his name, not as a slave, but as a leader, a warrior, and a legend who dared to challenge Rome itself. The night was silent. Only the sound of chains echoed through the corridors of the gladiator school in Capua. Spartacus sat in the shadows, his wrists bruised by iron cuffs. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and hopelessness. But inside him, something had begun to burn, a fire that no chain could hold. He whispered to the others, "Tonight we choose freedom, or die trying." Dozens of eyes turned to him. Some trembled, some glowed with new courage. With kitchen knives and wooden poles, they prepared to fight for something Rome had stolen from them, their dignity. As the moon climbed higher, they struck. The guards fell first, silent and fast. Then Spartacus burst into the chamber of his master, Lentulus Batiatus. The man who owned his life stared in disbelief. Spartacus said nothing. With one swift strike, the chains of servitude shattered forever. The gladiator school burned behind them as they fled into the darkness. The flames rose high, lighting the road to freedom. Spartacus looked back once, not in fear, but in promise. He knew this was only the beginning. That night, a slave became more than a man. He became a symbol. The Romans would call him a rebel, a murderer, a threat. But history would remember him by another name. Spartacus, the man who dared to fight for freedom. Spartacus had managed to escape from the gladiator school in Capua, thanks to the help of his loyal friends, the Gaul Crixus, Venemius, and Gannicus, and the courage of his wife, Sura. Together, they had gathered at the foothills of Mount Vesuvius, where their fight for freedom was about to begin. Participants in Spartacus's liberation army. On the slopes of Vesuvius, they trained as soldiers. Spartacus taught them tactics he had learned in the Roman ranks. Crixus led the Gauls, fierce and loyal. Venemius drilled discipline into chaos. Gannicus inspired them with unmatched courage. Day by day, the fugitives became warriors. Their numbers grew. Runaway slaves, shepherds, even poor farmers joined them. Soon, more than 70,000 men stood beneath the banner of Spartacus. Rome laughed at first, sending small detachments to crush the slaves, but those detachments never returned. Spartacus's army used the mountain terrain to their advantage, ambushing legions again and again. News spread like wildfire. The slaves had defeated Rome. For the first time in history, the oppressed had become the conquerors. Around their campfires, Spartacus spoke of a world without chains. "We fight not to destroy Rome," he said, "but to return home, free." Yet not all shared the same vision. Crixus sought revenge. Gannicus longed for glory. Venemius feared the cost of victory, but together they stood as one, the beating heart of rebellion. The rebellion had reached its final breath. Spartacus and his brothers, Crixus, Venemius, and Gannicus, had once shaken the very foundations of Rome. But now, after years of endless battles, their ranks had thinned. The dream of freedom that once burned like fire had become a flickering candle in the cold winds of fate. On the plains near the river Salaris, Spartacus stood tall. His armor was broken, his sword chipped, but his eyes still burned with defiance. The Roman legions under Marcus Licinius Crassus closed in from every side. There was no escape, only destiny. Spartacus raised his blade toward the stormy sky. "If we must die," he shouted, "then let us die as free men." The slaves roared back, their voices echoing through the valley like thunder. Then with one final charge, they clashed against the Roman steel. The ground shook, swords met shields, and the air filled with cries of pain and glory. Spartacus fought like a lion in his final hour, every strike a testament to his cause. Crixus fell first, pierced by a Roman spear. Gannicus fought beside Spartacus until he was surrounded. Venemius held his ground, his body pierced with arrows, still refusing to fall. Spartacus saw them die one after another, but he kept fighting. He screamed their names into the chaos, his sword fueled by rage and sorrow. They were brothers not by blood, but by freedom. At last, Spartacus was wounded. A Roman sword tore into his thigh, another cut across his shoulder. He dropped to one knee but refused to yield. Crassus's men surrounded him like wolves. Legend says he slew his final foe before he fell, never captured alive. His body was never found. Some say he vanished into the storm. Others say his spirit rose with the wind. The rebellion was crushed. 6,000 slaves were captured and crucified along the Appian Way. Their bodies stretched across miles, a warning carved into history. Yet even as they hung upon the crosses, their eyes held defiance. The legend of Spartacus refused to die. Across generations, whispers spread. He fought for freedom. History remembered him not as a conqueror, but as a symbol, a man who rose from chains to challenge an empire. His name became the cry of rebellion, the fire of resistance, and the echo of hope that refuses to fade. For as long as people yearn to be free, the spirit of Spartacus will never fall.